I used to be like you, a loser. I had bags the size of luggage under my eyes. I lost hair. I gained weight. Nobody wanted to be around me. I couldn't hit a bet worth my own while. Bad stretches. Things I thought I could pull myself out. Just double, triple down. Buying more only to lose more off ridiculous parlays. I had no idea what I was doing, like you have no idea what you were doing. It impacted my life. I kept making stupid mistakes over and over and over again. 5 times over, mind you. The 5 worst NFL bets I've ever placed. And I'll tell you how I fixed it. Because it's not just what fixed it for me, it's how it fixed it. 2022 saw some crazy storylines. And I remember looking at this game later in the season thinking, all right, I kind of believe that there's something definitely special going on with Geno Smith in Seattle. And a lot of it was narrative-based, narrative-driven, right? Where you saw this team catch fire. Geno was in conversation, comeback player of the year, Pete Carroll, Russell, who, all of this just swirling up, right, into this monster tornado as far as narrative and story, and just Geno Smith wrote him off and they didn't write back. So here comes a squad in Carolina, and I'm thinking, all right, this is the moment. This is the time. You lay the points. You take them in the first half. You double up, parlay on the money line. This is not a typical letdown game because what are you letting down against? And look, it's not to diminish what was going on with Steve Caldwell. It's not to diminish anything like that. This was, and the reason why this is number 5, it's recent. It's a bad loss. I was all over Seattle, and clearly what happened with the Carolina Panthers, interim coach and all, came through and just stomped me. And I get it. Like, a 17-point deficit is really difficult to come back from. And I think for Carolina, when you look at that game, you're thinking, really? This is the team that does it? But it was typical. It was short-sighted of me. It was one of these typical games later in the season where you should have seen coming. And it's more of a representation loss, I think, than anything else. And I just remember sitting on my couch knowing that this game's over. It wasn't even the 17 points. It was just a total misread. More hair, just slowly in this area of my head disappearing. It didn't even fall out. It was almost like singed, if you will. I just could not believe that Pete Carroll would be outcoached by a good coach. Geno Smith would be outplayed by Sam Darnold. I don't know, at least in the situation of losing the game, right? That's kind of how I looked at it. But it was one of those typical NFL losses, and it stung, and it's number 5 for me because I tripled the hell up. And it was brutal. Not reading it, misreading it the way in which I should have. All right, number 4. Boy, this one, nothing made sense about this loss. Nothing. And here's the thing. Just because the public was all over New England, or just because the line moved, or just whatever metric throughout the week that you want to sell yourself on, last year, where the New England Patriots somehow fell week 7. Remember this one? Because again, all over this one, all over it. And I'll tell you, the biggest one that really got smoked was the total. But the game itself, 33-14, and you lose to a team that did absolutely nothing. Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears somehow get over on Bill Belichick. On what would have been, mind you, what would have been an historic night for Belichick. So how many people lost betting the narrative? Me. Notice a theme here? That word's going to keep coming up. how many people got absolutely flattened thinking, this is a layup. This is a bucket. And watching this game made no sense. No sense. Because all you needed to do was just go out there and do what everybody else was able to do for the most part, and that's limit Justin Fields, because the rest of this team is going to crumble. They give up points, they turn the football over, they don't convert on third down, and they ultimately lose games, right? I mean, that's how the season ended. Just look at that stretch of games in which they lost. Oh, my goodness. You had one of the more mind-boggling games as well on offense. And this one, like, have you ever sat and watched a game? You know your ticket's over. Your ticket's over. But unlike the first one, there was hope in the first one. Number 5 was tough. And the reason, again, why I brought up number 5 was not only because of it just being such a representation loss of misreading the NFL, but also because it gave me hope. False hope, but it gave me hope. Something that I thought, all right, now I could come back. At least give me the money line and the parlay. At least give me that. No, just this one. Have you ever just sat there watching a game? Maybe you're with other people. This is the best if you're with other people. You know, people have to like shake you and stuff. I can't believe it. You're just like leave me alone.
I have the Patriots. I have the under. Leave me alone.
I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to deal with humanity right now. And you're at the edge of the bar because you've already distanced yourself from everybody else, or the couch, wherever it is, and anywhere in between. You're watching this game and you're just like, my God, this is the worst, because nothing makes sense. And when you're watching a game, not a moment, we'll get to a moment that doesn't make sense. But when you're watching a game and none of it makes sense, this is how Ben Raza watches tennis, because none of that shit makes sense. But you're watching a football game and you're just numb for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. You're just numb before it just kicks in. And it's one of these just days. You see this in the movie, right? Somebody's thinking about something and it goes to a different scene. And then it's like, hey, wake up. What are you doing? I don't know. Just blacked out. You watch everything. You consume everything. What about Bill Belichick versus Eberflus, the latter getting the better? What about Belichick's defense? What about their offense? Look, I know Matt Patricia, the warts and all the crap that was surrounded by that Patriots offense, they're significantly better just by getting rid of Matt Patricia. But still, this was like the best performance you saw all year by the Chicago Bears. That made no sense, and that bit me in the ass. So I remember 2006, I was in Nashville, Tennessee. I was working down in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was doing some radio down there and sports stuff. And we talked bets, because you talk bets, even though it wasn't legal at the time in Tennessee. I just remember on the radio having a major betting segment that was finally cleared. It took a long time for me to push this through management. And shout out to a couple of folks down there who did see this thing through, but it took a lot. And we finally got it for the NFL playoffs, and we ramped up and we built up. And I remember just sitting there thinking, well, this is it. Dallas Cowboys, Tony Romo, and I could speak freely about the Cowboys because I was out of Philadelphia at the time. So I was down in Nashville working, and people knew me as somebody who worked up in Philly, but I could wear my Eagles stuff and be Philly proud and all of that, but talk a little freer, if you will, right? When it came to the Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Cowboys, anything in between with that nonsense, that trauma, that just awesome hilarity. So I'm thinking Tony Romo. Now, look, Seahawks were no joke. I get it. In the sense of they had a couple of weapons. You knew that this was not a mistake, that you were in a wild card game ultimately, right? But here I am thinking, let me just make a splash, right? Go out there, we give out the Cowboys. We give out the Cowboys in points. We give out the Cowboys in a massive parlay. And all of a sudden, this is Dallas. I would have, I stopped short coming in the Friday before that game in a Tony Romo jersey because I knew, right, I could get away with it. Yeah, I mean, there was Facebook, maybe Twitter, I forget back then, but who cares? I didn't care at that point. I knew I could get away with it. So down in Nashville, giving out this big play. It's the Cowboys telling people, because I didn't know any better, right? The lock of the century, giving this all out about Tony Romo and how this is the day, this is the moment in which the Cowboys are going to do it. Start on this massive run. Get back into the Super Bowl. Win. Put up some hardware. No. This was the game. Now, he should never have been there in the first place. Never. But as I mentioned in my fourth play, my fourth worst NFL bet of all time, how the Chicago Bears did something and I was numb for about 60 minutes watching a football game until it finally hit me. This was a moment that lasted forever, or at least it felt it. To watch Tony Romo after you had already, and again, you understand what went into this play. This was not just me getting on the internet. This was not just me getting on any radio show, not getting on any TV show. This was something I had fought for tooth and nail and truly wanted and told people this was the play. Let's all celebrate together. I'm lucky there wasn't Twitter, or at least I didn't have Twitter. I don't think back then I would have been just destroyed. People would have found me out. We went to the bar. We're all watching as a show, looking at this thing. Just, and it's replayed. Oh my God, Romo! And you knew something was off. The fact that he was out there in the first place, we know that. All Grammatica had to do was just knock this thing in. Okay. Fumble snap. Okay. Wait a second. This is all moving at like
0.00001 second at a time.
Like the smallest advancement of a frame. I'm watching this. Okay. I got you. Wait a second. Still has a chance. Get to the 1 yard line. It's a first down. This is an NFL starting quarterback. He has the athletic ability, prowess, mental prowess, just vision to say, I can get that yard, right? Just get me to the one. Maybe you can cross the end zone and win the game, right? Like maybe you could just do that, win the game. Nope, tackled at the 2. What? Sitting there, looking at this in hindsight, it's the equivalent of having one drink through college or post-college, or maybe when in your youth, if you didn't go to college, that's fine, whatever. Man, I can't drink Sprite anymore because all I did for 6 years was drink vodka and Sprite. I can't drink bourbon because all I did was drink bourbon and Coke, whatever it is. I cannot look at that play without vomiting. Number 2, I graduated college in the fall of 2001. So first started to get into having a little more expendable or actual income, right? Expendable a little bit, but getting into some bets and started to try and follow things along. And like anything, you want to study and learn, and you want to take advantage of timing. Opportunity is always what you're being told. From closing line value to just jumping on circumstance, injury, absence, or the return of a player, whatever it may be. Like you're always told about that. So I'm a couple of years out of college. This is still, I'm down in Washington, D.C. at the time, living and working near Adams Morgan. For all of you who know it, shout out. Check out Grand Central Sportsbook if you're down there. Just a quick little personal thing. Tell them Large Marge, actually Shander. Tell them Eitan Shander sent you. Ask for Brian. So I'm sitting there long time ago, 2003. I remember vividly. This was at a bar. Because I had bragged to anyone and everyone who could hear me. Again, not legal like it is now in D.C., so you find ways back in the day. I tried to bet a narrative. I tried to get away with a narrative. A day before the game, one day before the game, Sunday, before a Monday night primetime game, we were told that Brett Favre's father had passed away. there was very little time, if any, to just compute and to mourn. This is a human being. I know a lot of you now out there don't think Brett Favre is a human being. I understand that. I'm not here to argue that. What I'm here to say, though, is that at the time, not anything Brett Favre was doing or taking or anything in between or sending, whatever it may be, could numb. And let's be real. Let's be human beings for a second. The man lost his father. December 22nd. I have the date here to jog it because I'll never forget the next date, the 23rd. No, the 22nd was the date. I'll never forget that. Sorry, the 21st. That sounded like something right out of The Simpsons. Can you edit that? I just remember hearing this news and going to where I could go. Thankfully, I had a guy because somebody else had a guy, and they showed me that guy, and I had a guy. And I went and said, there's just no way this guy's playing. He's just not playing. There is no way in hell that Brett Favre is going to play hours, not even days, hours after he lost his father. Like, can you imagine that? Seriously. Like, in any capacity. Now, look, we know, and I know now in hindsight, as I got older and I started working in this business and started seeing that if given the opportunity, guys are definitely going to take advantage of that. But, I mean, seriously, can you imagine that? You just think, all right, there's no way in hell that this guy's going to play. He's got to take some time. He's got to miss the game. He didn't miss the game. Narrator. He didn't miss the game. The guy came out and just absolutely hammered, just freaking hammered me and the Oakland Raiders in doing so. 31-7 at the half. 31-7. First off, as soon as I found out, I didn't even watch the game. I'm going to be completely 1,000% honest with you. I didn't even watch the game. As soon as I found out that the guy was playing, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? First off, I'm not going anywhere public and rooting against him, right? No. I was in Washington, D.C. People knew what side I was on. So I wasn't outwardly rooting against him. I was just sitting there just watching the game. And I remember this was one of those moments where it's just you're paralyzed. Not numb. Numb is like you have no idea. Paralyzed is like you're fully aware of what's going on. You're watching this thing like, I can't move. I can't move. Like, why did I do this? This was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Well, second. It was ridiculous. It was asinine. It was foolish. I misread a market by betting on a narrative, thinking that a guy would not play, doing what he does best. And we've seen it. Andy Reid and countless others. You may be one of these people as well. I know I am. When I've gone through something that is just too difficult to speak about, too difficult to talk about, too difficult what seems to go through, work. Just get me back to work. I didn't have that at the time. I was what they call a late bloomer. Barely working down in D.C. It's 6 of us in like a 3-bedroom. And I'm thinking, all right, this is my ticket out. Boy, what a mistake. What an absolute mistake that was. I never bet against another player in the history of any sport coming off the loss of a loved one. At least I was able to learn from that. So I'm in Philadelphia, grew up an Eagles fan, not from Philly originally, but have been living here over 2 decades. This has been home. The Eagles have been my favorite team even before I lived in Philadelphia. The worst bet I ever made was taking them in the Super Bowl the first time around to beat the New England Patriots. And I know now in hindsight, it was the worst bet I ever placed. Not because of something stupid I did, but something just completely out of my control and arguably something that happened that wouldn't necessarily be the smartest thing dealing with 2 players. So I worked 2 years with Rodney Harrison on NBC Sports Radio. We did a show together. Rodney took every single opportunity, one of the best guys you'll ever meet. And I say this in Philadelphia, the guy had a magnet in his jersey during this game. The whole Spygate stuff and other crap that surrounded it. It looked like they knew exactly what was going on. And they did. Spygate or not, they did. And Rodney was one of them. It looked like it was just McNabb couldn't help himself. And I know you heard the stories about the alleged vomit and the other crap. No. The only person really vomiting was me at the end of this game. And this was not a spread bet. This was an outright bet. This is the Eagles going to do it. This is the Philadelphia Eagles going to win the Super Bowl bet. So I took them and I watched this game like we all watched this game. And it was one of the closest games at the time of Super Bowl history, and the Eagles battled back, and this comeback fell short, and it was great, except for the fact that the Eagles lost and I lost. Come to find out, as I worked with Rodney, that Freddie Mitchell, who I also worked with, who I also like, who has been nothing but great to me. And I know that a lot of you out there have specific feelings about both Freddie Mitchell and Rodney Harrison, and maybe there is something to it that they get along with me, or that of all people, I get along with them. But Rodney starts telling a story to me about Freddie Mitchell. How Freddie, the week ahead, was going off in the media about 37 and a couple of other guys on that team, 37 being Rodney. Not addressing anybody by name, saying, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And look, Freddie was jacked up. He came off a huge championship game. He helped fill a major void, and credit to him when T.O. was hurt in the playoffs. They fired up the wrong guy. So Rodney Harrison's on the radio with me saying, you know who caught wind of that? I didn't even know this, as Rodney's saying. I didn't even know who caught wind of this. But here I am in the locker, just getting ready for this game. And this story had been brought up now all over the place. And it caught Andy Reid allegedly was heated at Freddie Mitchell for making these comments, because he knew you get wind of this if you're the wrong person. And I ain't talking about the hoodie. Things go from manageable to not. So over walks number 12, Tom Brady. You ever heard of him? It says, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. But we got this. We got this for you. We got this for Ty. And he's talked about everybody else that Freddie didn't mention specifically by name. The best quarterback of all time went over to Rodney Harrison and said a Philadelphia Eagles receiver's trash talk is motivating them to get them that. And look, of all the things that were said, of all the, come on, let's go get. Tom Brady specifically mentions that to Rodney Harrison. There is no way in hell that bet was going to hit. Doomed from the very start. They hung in there, but ultimately it was that. It was that extra push. Oh, still gets me. Even though they won in 2017, it still gets me. It's the worst bet I ever placed. The narrative of all things bit me in the rear. Now take a look at me. Life has changed for the better. Nice clean head, nice clean shaven, dropped some weight. I'm smiling, married, have children. Look, we even beefed up the living room here. I'm wearing ugly, expensive clothing. You know things are going well. How did I change my life for the better? I told you, it's not just why, it's the what. The Odd Shopper Premium tool. You too can use it. You can sign up. You're going to beat the market every single time. You no longer have to worry about betting off gut or narrative or feel or this team's going to beat the other. None of that. You're making smart, informative decisions. And as you can see, your life too will be changed for the better. 5 of the worst NFL bets I ever placed. Bye-bye. That's in the past now. Let's bet smart and let's make some money with the Odd Shopper Premium tool.